Hello and welcome to Gamefixt First Podcast. I'm your host Lora, and with me today is Stella. Today we will be discussing some issues regarding feminism in the gaming community.
Hello.
Hi. So, as you know, and as our listeners know, gender issues and equality issues are prevalent pretty much everywhere right now in modern society, on the internet, advertising. But most importantly for us, we're going to talk about the issues in gaming culture and video games. The gaming community isn't helped by the backlash against videos and speeches discussing sexism and gender inequality. So, as we know, a lot of people have been trying to apply modern feminism, kind of the third way of feminism, into the nerd community.
Such as Anita Sarkeesian, most famously right now.
Yep, we'll be talking about her. She is the blogger for Feminist Frequency. She has her own YouTube channel, and she has been met with a lot of harassment. Another example is Zoe Quinn, and she developed Depression Quest, and when she submitted her game to Steam, she also faced a lot of harassment. So, back to just the broad point, though, many attempts are made by both women and men, mostly women right now, though, to promote equality, and they just get a lot of backlash. And the harassment would range from, just photos, Anita Sarkeesian, she had a Kickstarter to start a video series called Tropes vs. Women in Video Games. And while she met her goal of $6,000 in 24 hours, and actually they exceeded it, she got $150,000 for the project. She got a lot of emails with a lot of negativity. People sent her photos of her being raped by video game characters. She was harassed on her Twitter and Google accounts, and people were trying to hack into them. There were a lot of negative comments on her YouTube and Facebook pages. Her Wikipedia page was vandalized with a lot of, pornographic photos.
Someone
and she was also
designed
DDoSed.
a video game where you could punch her in the face as the primary goal.
And this is all just because she is trying to bring awareness to feminism issues and patterns within gaming. She's not even doing anything negative. She's just speaking a point and trying to raise awareness. Like I mentioned before, the similar thing happened to Zoe Quinn. She made a game called Depression Quest, and it's basically you can live as someone who has depression. You can see what it's like, and the main point of the game was kind of to eradicate some mental illness stigma. And when she was submitting it to Steam's Greenlight campaign, she got a lot of anonymous phone calls that were sexually harassing. A lot of people online were posting negative comments and, tweeting at her. And it's just, there's no point for that. And a lot of this behavior isn't even abnormal. There's a report on VG247.com. In a study conducted by Emily Matthew over at Price Charting Blog, found that 80% of respondents polled believe sexism is rampant in the gaming community, and 63% of women polled report actually being harassed while gaming online. And those are pretty big numbers considering that women make up most of the gaming majority population. And I've even had my own sexist issues while gaming. I used to play World of Warcraft, and when people found out I was female, usually through voice chat or just getting to know me, their behaviors toward me would change. It wasn't necessarily negative all the time. It was actually the opposite. I had people offering to pay for my account. I had things bought for me with in-game currency and stuff like that. But that's still sexist because the behavior is changing due to the gender and sex of the other person. So this stuff is pretty much everywhere. You would agree, right, Stella? You've witnessed things like this?
I've witnessed things like this ever since I was young playing video games online. Differential treatment of women and female-identified people has been happening since the early days of MMOs and, say, multi-user dungeons. I experienced similar things back in the day with text-based adventures. But when you compare, like, the number of women who have quit playing games temporarily because of harassment or quit playing entirely versus the number of men who report it, it's, like, 3 times higher for women than it is for men, like 33% versus about 9%, which is pretty significant.
It is, and I feel like the whole point of the gaming community and culture is to bring people together through games, but it seems like the only people that are being brought together are men, even though we know that women play a lot more games, and we just don't think about it because we're not allowed to express ourselves online. Which kind of makes sense in a way because, you know, online it's easier to be anonymous, but I just feel like if once you get to know someone, if their gender or sexual identity comes up, it shouldn't change anything, you know? It's kind of like, it should be addressed like it is in real life. You go up to people, you see how they express themselves, and then you just talk to them. But even online, I feel like just the whole being able to address people unlike you would in real life just gets out of hand. I mean, I know, like, even on Facebook, for me, I'm propositioned pretty much 24/7 by men. And it is harassment, and it is annoying, and it shouldn't be a thing that men think that they can do just because someone is a woman. But then this kind of leads into, like, why? Why is being a woman on the internet and in gaming such an issue?
Part of it is probably at least the traditional bias against, or like attitude against women in technology that's kind of old school.
Well, you're a game developer, so
yeah.
Can you talk more about that?
Well, I'm not really a big enough game developer to have had a big enough issue with being a woman in the game industry. And when I have worked in the game industry, it's been all right. But at the same time, even the games we developed were more male-marketed and male-centered in their content and gameplay, both in terms of how often the lead is a male character, or if there's a choice in genders, how often the marketing figures with the male characters lead, such as with Mass Effect.
Yeah, and I feel like even games that are starting to do a better job with having female supporting characters or main characters be more, like, able to stand on their own and not a damsel in distress, they still are super sexualized in how they look. Like BioShock Infinite, Elizabeth. She actually is very useful, you know, which is a great change in modern gaming. She saves your ass a few times. But she still looks very childlike Disney and is very thin and curvy where she needs to be and is very attractive in a modern beauty culture sense. So where we're still making strides in having women be useful in games, we still have to make them look a certain way to get people interested.
Not to mention the continued trend towards armor on female characters that doesn't protect at all.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in real life, she's basically wearing a bikini, and she'd probably be dead first if she was actually fighting. So some theories that I have, I mean, I still think that, you know, despite how far we've come in the social justice and civil rights movement, misogyny, which is the hatred of women, is still very prevalent. And it doesn't even have to be an outward, I hate women, blah, blah, blah. It's very subtle through advertisements, you know, like in media and in game character designs, like we said, hypersexualization. But even just in advertisements, like women are always the homemakers. Yogurt is only, like, depicted for women. I don't know if you've noticed that in TV. Like, there are just a lot of things that women are, we know them to be the weaker sex. We know them to be more emotional, which, yeah, there are brain differences in men and women, but it's not so much that they can't be advertised the same stuff. We can't have the same kind of branding. So one of my theories is that we still live in a sort of patriarchal society. You know, our society was founded with men in mind. And the more women are given power, the more afraid we are to lose traditionalism, even though it's not the case.
I think it's more than a theory that our current society is patriarchal. If you just look at history, it's a pretty established thing that it's been that way.
Yeah, and I mean, even though since the 70s and 80s women have been able to join the workforce, which honestly is not a long time ago. Like, we've just started this movement, and we've made a lot of strides, but still at the same time, I mean, we know for a fact women aren't paid the same amount as men. There's still a lot of pressure and issue around maternity leave. A lot of women feel they have to choose between career and raising a family. There's still that weird dichotomy that we've now created for no reason. I feel like that's the main issue. Do you see like any other reasons why people should be or would be afraid of women in power or women being empowered?
I mean, it's difficult for me to see those necessarily because I don't align with that sort of reasoning, but not really.
Yeah, I just feel like it's just afraid of letting people progress in modern society while still trying to hold on to old school values, which honestly will not be lost. If anything, they'll be integrated and they'll be strengthened by people wanting to choose instead of being forced to follow some sort of path.
People have always been scared to change. It's a thing.
Right. And I think people are also afraid, like, I feel like the reason why Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn and every other woman developer who makes a stand and is very public with feminist issues is because people are afraid of the term feminism. The way I see feminism and the way I believe is that I'm not trying to say that men and women are equal. I know that from studying the brain that there are differences, and there are cultural differences, obviously, but it's not that I want them to be equal or the same, but I want both types of people to be accepted in society and both strengths to be embraced. Men right now are more embraced in society than women, and we can obviously tell that by even referring to women as the weaker sex and still having people believe that and still having them not be tropes such as the strong independent female. Like, why can't it just be a female with those traits instead of just being specifically a strong independent female versus what else, So the feminist struggle with me at least lies that they need to have the same sort of worth. Not saying that we should erase gender and just see everyone as the same, because I just don't think scientifically that makes sense. But to have people be on the same playing field and have women, make as much money and be regarded as highly as men.
I think feminism does kind of get a bad rap. Gets associated with, like, angry, man-hating stereotypes from, like, third-wave feminism and things like that. And that's a reason that a lot of cultural attitudes against it still exist.
Right. I think it's also just, people just aren't educated and don't want to know. They're like, oh, okay, it's people who, burn bras and hate men and are all lesbians and blah, 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 don't want to adhere to female role types and all that. But it's like, no, it's honestly just wanting to be taken as seriously as men. And even just as people,
I think that's a good point.
The point is, though, the struggle within society does show up in gaming because gaming is an art, and art imitates life, imitates art. Everything that humans produced is based on what they see in life, and often what we see in life, we see in art. And I think that in gaming especially, people game to escape reality. So it's important that women do feel accepted both outside of gaming culture and inside of gaming culture. It's been proven that gamers have better response time, they can figure out problems, and they also, especially, for teenagers, it gives them a sense of community and somewhere to escape. And women need that just as much as men do. So I feel that the benefits of equality in gaming would be tremendous for women.
If women could feel more included in gaming, then more people of all genders could enjoy gaming together instead of having, say, social stereotypes that you can't enjoy games with your girlfriend if you're like a straight dude, or saying that certain types of games are just for women or just for men, things like that.
Right, and it would just be easier for everyone to enjoy the game, because the whole point of gaming is the game, and then is just having fun with your friends, and then is being part of a bigger community. And the bigger community feel is deterred when there is inequality and when there's backlash and when there's harassment. And even some stupid line, such as, get back in the kitchen or make me a sandwich, that is still harassment, and it is still, an inequality against women, no matter how inconsequential that phrase may sound to be.
And there's a tendency to say, after, when called out on these things, to say, oh, it's joking, or I'm just kidding around. But the thing is that these sort of repeated attitudes aren't really just kidding around, and that's often just kind of a cover-up for actions and allows it to continue.
Right. Feminist issues in gaming are important to recognize and to promote because they lead to a more progressive society. Video games are meant to bring people together in a shared community, in addition to being entertaining, and a medium for storytelling. Women make up an important aspect of society, and their presence in gaming culture, thus, can only strengthen the community as a whole. Overall, feminist discussion should be welcomed in the ongoing social issue of equality. So that pretty much wraps up today's topic. Thanks so much for listening. You can log on to Gamefixt.com for more up-to-date gaming news. And you can also find me, Lora, on Geekbeat Radio on Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern on geekbeatradio.com. Thanks again.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.